Why did this game fail? Or this one? Or this one? It feels like a toss-up if you make an indie title. You have no idea where the dice will fall. And it only gets worse when you realize only 4% of games will turn a profit. Talk about some bad odds. But some succeed, right? So why can't I? That's the age-old question. There has to be some method to the madness, some secret sauce that gets games to fly off the shelf. As Benjamin Anderson puts it, if you are looking for an indie dev game guru with a secret ingredient, silver bullet, or some simple trick to becoming a successful game developer, then you're in the wrong place. However, there are tried and true business processes that when followed can drastically decrease the likelihood of failure. Basic steps to make sure any indie game has potential to succeed. And it starts with changing your passion. The first problem indie developers run into is they focus too much on an idea, a passion project usually modeled after a game they love. These developers start strong and their dream game drives them forward, but then they hit a few bumps in the road. These developers realize coding is hard, or they realize they aren't that artistic or their music isn't great. Whatever it is, the feeling of inadequacy kicks in and these once passionate developers struggle with imposter syndrome, feeling like they can't do it or that game development isn't for them. Even the developers that do finish their games often put their passion in the wrong place, because when their game hits the store and it doesn't sell, they give up, believing they are a failure. This mentality is the reason why 75% of developers on Steam have only released one game. For the amount of time it takes to make a game and learn the skills to do it, you'd think more developers would take what they learned and try again, but they don't, because the majority of developers lose the passion for what they are creating, sadly putting their heart and soul into something that will never see the light of day. But this feeling, this failure stems from having your priorities in the wrong place. Don't put your passion in an idea, but in the process of creation. Have passion for building, making, testing. These are the elements you should learn to love when you are building games or anything really. My favorite example of this mentality was John Romero and id Software, the creators of Doom. These guys were animals back in the day. John Romero stated in his book that Carmack, Tom, and I had each been making games for 10 years before we started working together. It was another few years before we made Doom, and that was my 90th game. It's incredible that John made 90 games before working on Doom. But what is more interesting is that it took almost 15 years before John and his team found global success. So when asked about his success, John Romero said this: execution is everything. Success is not defined by an idea. It is determined by your ability to execute on that idea. Give yourself time to get good, and don't be dissuaded by setbacks. Game development is like gameplay. Load your save and try again. So the first step is to change your passion, change the way you think. Be excited about the game you are making, for sure, but be more excited about the process of making games. To quote The Way of Kings, one of my favorite books of all time, journey before destination. But like every journey, you need to know where you are going. And in the context of indie development, you need to know who's going to buy and play your game. So often developers focus on what they want or even what their close few friends want, and not what the majority of others want. Making something reminiscent to Homer's car in The Simpsons, with the bubble and multiple horns and all the other weird bells and whistles. I'm ruined! I'll say the same thing I've said to hundreds of others I've consulted. What someone should have said to Homer and his half-brother when they were making this car. Stop building and go talk to people. This is the second step to avoiding Homer level of failure and should be done before you ever write a single line of code. Take your ideas to players. See what they like, but also what they don't like. Get feedback. Don't follow the advice of those that say, if Ford had asked people what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse, not a car. I hate that quote. I can promise you Ford talked to people, and when he heard them say they wanted a faster horse, he was smart enough to read between the lines and understand that they wanted to travel faster. Do the same. Listen to what people have to say, not just the words, but the feelings. This will give you so many ideas and help you create something you never thought possible. Don't assume that you know better than others. I made this mistake with my first company I started, an edtech company called SpeechCloud. I made all sorts of assumptions about my market, and because I didn't validate these assumptions, I ended up crashing and burning and having to pivot. I was too hot-headed, thinking I knew best, and I was too lazy to get out of the house and talk to people. The BattleBit team also made this mistake. They were so focused on creating a squad-like game, not realizing their community didn't want what they were making. And because they didn't validate and listen to players, it cost them years of development.
The legacy version of BattleBit was completely hardcore, and it somewhat failed back then because there was no audience for an extreme hardcore blocky game. And then we made it more casual.
Realize you don't know what people want and just ask. Don't take everything to heart, but learn as much as you can. This will help you avoid the huge pitfalls when you're in the middle of development, thinking you have something cool, And then you launch your game and,
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
but even then, how do you know this dude yelling in the back is actually someone you should be listening to? How do you know you are talking to the right people? Oftentimes, we solicit feedback from individuals that will never play our game. Talking to the guy that hates JRPGs about our JRPG.
Listen, we just have to do 27 more potato side quests so that my guy can swim 3% faster.
To find the right player base, you need to research your market. Specifically, research the genre you are entering. This information will be your foundation to help you determine how to build your game and is the third step to avoiding failure. Know your market. Now, this may sound too businessy for some people, thinking, I'm just a game developer. I don't need to know about the market. I just need to focus on making a great game. And if that is your mentality, well, I hope I can change your mind, because you aren't just a developer, you are an entrepreneur. You're starting a business that requires you to be a lot more than just a coder or an artist. You need to wear every hat, from development to marketing, or at least a few hats if you have a team. And you or someone needs to know your market. Now, some people may be asking, what even is a market? How do I know I'm talking to the right player base? And how do I possibly determine a market's potential? I'll do my best to explain using an example, something simple. Imagine you really like match apps and you want to make one yourself, something like Candy Crush. Well, all games are tied to some kind of base genre, whether it's puzzles, platformers, shooters, or a variety of others. We know Candy Crush is part of the puzzle game market because of Steam tags, App Store tags, and tons of other classifiers. So to determine your market or genre, you need to find similar games to yours by looking at the tags and listening to how players classify similar titles to the one you are making. But puzzle games come in all shapes and sizes. Portal and Candy Crush are both labeled as puzzle games, and I can tell you right now that my Candy Crush loving grandma is not picking up Portal anytime soon. So the demographics are very different. This is why we have sub-tags, which are often called sub-markets or sub-genres, with puzzle games like Portal, Unpacking, Candy Crush, and Babo's You all sitting in their own categories and with their own player bases. Portal is known as a puzzle platformer, where Candy Crush is a match 3 puzzle game. So for our example, we would want to look at the match 3 submarket, not puzzle platformers, to know who is our target player base. Just look around on websites or Steam and you'll find all sorts of data and information. For match 3 games, this is what I found. 60% of match 3 players are female and the majority are in the age range of 25 to 34. On another website, they broke down match 3 player archetypes, showing why certain people play match 3 games. Another one showed which matching style was more successful in certain countries. I could keep going. There was a crazy amount of demographic information on match 3 games. A little creepy, in all honesty, but you get it. All this information and research tells me who my target player base is and what match games are and aren't successful. Some genres won't have as much data, so you'll need to dig a little more. But what about my market's potential? How do I determine making this game is worth my time? Well, let's imagine if no other puzzle games existed and every person in the puzzle market bought your Candy Crush game. You would make $15 billion, according to the most recent puzzle market revenue. Sounds great, right? But that, of course, is unrealistic. As I explained, the puzzle market has all sorts of variance in its player base. So it doesn't matter how amazing your puzzle game is, you're not making $15 billion because not every puzzle player has the same taste. So we need to look at the submarket of your game to determine the actual potential. If we look at the match 3 revenue numbers, we can see the market averages $1 billion or $2 billion a year, not 15 billion, but still a big chunk. Now we know the market and its highest potential, we need to determine how our game would perform within the match 3 genre. This is where that research you did comes in handy. What games are similar to yours? How did they perform? What platforms did they perform well on? If we look at the highest match 3 performers, we can see the top 5 have 85% of the market share. This tells me that the match 3 genre is dominated by a few companies and that it's unlikely an indie game can swoop in and capture the market. And if we look at the bottom 5 on this list, their revenue starts tapering off pretty quickly. If we also look at the average match 3 games, we can see the majority don't get over 5K downloads and they make less than $5,000 each, according to some Android data and Steam data I found. All this information tells us what is likely to happen. Your game may blow up, but most likely your match game will make a few $1,000s. So if you plan on making a match 3 game that will take a year to create and $50,000 in investment, then it's likely to be a commercial failure. But if you make a match 3 game in a month with only $200, then it could be a huge success. All this information is not meant to dissuade you from making games, but to inform, to help you make educated decisions and set reasonable expectations. In a recent conversation I had with an indie developer, we were talking about his platform fighter he was making. He told me he'd been working on his game for a few years, and that all he needed was $200,000 to finish his game. This immediately set off some red flags in my head. So I asked him, how big was the market? He wasn't entirely sure. But together, we did a little research and discovered that the top 10% of indie platform fighters make an average of $400,000 to $800,000. Not bad, but remember, this is the top 10%, not the average. See the problem here? The developer was spending years making this platform fighter, trying to get hundreds of thousands of dollars in investment, only for his game to maybe make a little more than what would be invested. That's not good. And no legitimate publisher or investor is going to give that kind of money with such a low return on investment. So you need to understand your market and have reasonable expectations. But why do AAA games do so well when so many indies struggle? What separates most AAAs from indies? Well, it's our fourth and last reason most indie games fail. Good old marketing. Most indie games fail because the devs don't market their game or they do it poorly. Now, it will take a whole video to cover the issues of marketing in the indie dev space, and if you're interested in that video, subscribe and let me know that you're interested. Or you can actually check out some of our Patreon content to get a deeper dive, but let's just keep it all simple for now. Indie studios struggle because they don't spend enough time or money on marketing, and when they do, they market their game to the wrong people. Like I explained before, most devs don't understand who their target player base is. They just throw crap on social media thinking somebody will see their post and will sell their game like hotcakes.
Baby needs a new pair of shoes.
Sadly, that doesn't work. Marketing is about value, specifically content marketing. So when you create that social media post or devlog, ask yourself, what value does my audience get watching this video or reading this post? Is it inspirational? Is it educational? Is it entertaining?
Are you not entertained?
Don't tell me about your game. Deliver some sort of value. Make me want to watch or make me want to read. And secondly, deliver value to the right audience. Just because you get 100,000 views on a video doesn't mean those views convert into wish lists or sales. Great example is actually the indie game we highlighted in a recent video, Tanks But No Tanks. I've been chatting with Thomas the developer, doing some free consulting, and his biggest issue was awareness, like most indie developers. So I gave him some advice, and I told him we would highlight his game in one of our videos to try driving more people to his Steam page. I linked his game below, by the way. Lazily, I chose to highlight Thomas's game, Tanks But No Tanks, in the video I was working on at the time. Counter-Strike Should Be Dead by Now. That video has done well and has hundreds of thousands of views. But what's odd is that even though Thomas's game has gotten thousands of eyes on it, Tanks But No Tanks has only seen a few sales from the Counter-Strike video. This is a great example of poor marketing by me. Tanks But No Tanks is more of a party game, something you would find yourself playing on a Nintendo console, not something being played by competitive FPS sweats like Counter-Strike. So I screwed up. Imagine instead if I did a video on old classic Wii games and how fun they were. Then I showed Tanks But No Tanks at the end. What do you think his conversion would be like then? What do you think his conversion would be like if I talked about his game in a more relevant way within a video instead of at the end where people drop off? Like what I'm doing right now. This is the key to marketing. You need to know where the audience is, what social platforms they're on, what value you can give them, and why they should care. All this being said, it's critical to remember that games are not just businesses. It's not so cut and dry on why certain games fail and then others succeed. There's emotion and culture and social implications involved that add too much variance. But the reason so many indie games fail is because they forget it's art and business combined. You can make the most amazing game, and if you can't get it in front of the right audience, it doesn't matter. So you need to change your passion, research your market, determine its potential, and market your game to the right audience. If you do that, you will drastically lower the chances of failure. And remember, failure is 90% perspective. If you wanted to publish your indie game and that's all you wanted to achieve, it doesn't matter if your game makes money as long as that was your goal. One man's failure is another man's success. So be like John Romero and just fall in love with the process of creation. If you do that and you put some effort into the business side of indie games, don't be surprised when you find yourself making a successful indie game. Be like the developer of the 3 failed games I featured at the beginning. Keep making games till one of them succeeds. Now to end this video, we're going to give Thomas some more love. He worked really hard on his game, and he aspires to be an indie dev for the long haul. So go pick up a copy of Tanks But No Tanks and tell your friends. Best of luck to all of the indie devs out there. Keep grinding and make it happen. See ya.